Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Public announcements. We have a public announcement from our Director of Veteran Services, Joe Colantoni. It reads, "To who it may concern, this is to notify you that Michael Winners has completed the renovation to the Staff Sergeant Richard Allen Fitz Memorial, located at the corner of Route 139 and Hancock Street. The family of Staff Sergeant Fitz, his wife Victoria, and son Richard are very happy in what Mike has accomplished. Also, the town of Abington, the local Vietnam veterans, and all those concerned are deeply appreciative of what Mike has done. As the town of Abington's Veteran Service Officer, I cannot express my gratitude enough for Mike's efforts." Signed, Joe Colantoni. Also, nomination papers are available at the town clerk's office. They must be returned by March 12th at 5 p.m. Warrant closes for annual town meeting on February 29th. The seats available this year are 2 selectmen, 1 assessor, 2 members of the school committee, 2 members of the Board of Health, 1 water commissioner, 1 park and recreation commissioner, 1 sewer commissioner, 1 trustee of Veterans Memorial, 3 trustees of the public library, all for 3-year terms, 1 member planning board and 1 member housing authority for 5-year terms, also a 1-year unexpired term for water commissioner. Also, the town clerk's office will be open for voter registration until 8 p.m. on Wednesday, February 15th, 2012, which will be the last day to register to vote to be eligible for the April 2nd, 2012 annual town meeting and the April 28th, 2012 annual town election. January 19th. Absentee ballots for March 6th presidential primary are now available. Okay. Anything else under public announcements? Okay, with us,
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, John, go ahead.
I do. It just come to my attention that Joe Colantoni knows about what I'm announcing, so it shouldn't come as a great surprise to him, but the Cardinal Spellman General Assembly 407 is having a testimonial dinner on February 25th, which is a Saturday, for the Abington veteran agent Joe Colantoni. This event is a time in which people can offer their thank yous and congratulations to Joe. If anyone is interested in attending, we do have a very limited number of tickets available for the event. The tickets are $20, and there are at least 6 to 8 tickets available that I hope that members of the Board of Selectmen and myself and others are going to attend. I plan on having a rather humorous whereas and forthwith type proclamation for him. I don't think that I can do it all on one page. I still can't do the town report, the town manager's report in under 2 minutes, so we're going to have also a proclamation for the board to sign as well. So between that period of time, which I believe this is our last meeting before our next meeting, I think. Do we have one on the 22nd?
No, the 27th.
27th. So we're going to miss. So I'll let you know as to when to come in and sign that proclamation to get that ready as well. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Also, under public announcements, we have with us here tonight Deborah DeFranco. She's here to promote the Old Abington Tricentennial Gala, which will be March 3rd, 2012. Deborah?
Thank you, sir. Esteemed gentlemen, and to the residents of Abington, the Old Abington Tricentennial is going to be coming up very, very soon on March 3rd, 2012. As we all know, it's been a while since the residents have had a chance to attend a dinner dance at an affordable price. The opportunity to be made possible by the Abington Tricentennial Committee. The gala is the second event of several that are planned by the committee to celebrate the 300th anniversary of Abington becoming an official town back in 1712. The residents of Old Abington include Rockland and present-day Whitman, as well as Abington proper. We're invited to join the celebration of fun that will begin on 7 p.m. Saturday, March 3rd, 2012. It will start with a buffet dinner. The program will include dancing to the music of 4 guys in tuxes. They're a sextet. They have also a few surprises planned. The Massasoit Conference Center is located at 77 Crescent Street in Brockton. That will be the site in which the dance will be held. The cost is only $25 per person. Historical dress is encouraged, but you do not have to come like me. It's optional. We just want you to all have a good time, the lasting memories to be made. The Abington Garden Club will be assisting the committee and will be making centerpieces that will be taken home as mementos for the ladies. The snow date will be the following day on March 4th. There are several places where the tickets may be purchased. In Abington, you can go to the Abington Public Library, also get a good book, the Abington Senior Center, the Abington Ale House, the Busy Beaver Gift Shop, Misa Regatta Restaurant, and That Little Basket, as well as in Whitman at Duval's Pharmacy and the Regal Marketplace. In Rockland, you can purchase them at the Town Hall or at Anna Maria's Coffee Shop. The tickets will be on sale till February 22nd. They will not be available at the door. They are going fast, so please do not delay. Thank you for your time, sirs.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you. If I could, Mr. Chairman. Sure. I think in concert with the announcement from Deborah, I just want to say that any resident who would like to come, I think it'll be a great take, and also to bring your camera, because Mike Franey's going to dress up as Charles Dickens.
Again.
Okay,
Nicely done, Deborah, thank you. Very nicely.
thank you. Are there any other public announcements?
Just, Mr. Chairman, I might suggest if we send, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, a thank you letter to Michael for the work he did at the memorial on behalf of the board, if you could, please.
Sure. Anything else? Okay. Next on the agenda, a request to amend the underground storage license to add a 6,000 tank of motor fuel for a total of 24,000 gallons at 115 Brockton Avenue. The Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Monday, February 13, 2012, at 6:35 p.m. in the Carter Hearing Room, 500 Glenowicz Way, on the application of 115 Brockton Ave, LLC, DBA Abington Sitco, for an amendment to the underground storage license to add a 6,000-gallon tank for motor fuel for a new total of 24,000 gallons. I entertain a motion to open the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second. The hearing is open.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
before you begin the hearing, I want you to know that we have received the green cards. The abutters have been notified appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Are you here to represent Sitco? Could you please take the podium and introduce yourself, please?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Anthony Guba. I work for AUB Engineering, based in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, representing the applicant 115 Brockton Ave, LLC.
Could you just explain a little bit about how this is going to take place and if the tank locations are going to be the same? And that sort of-
Yeah, basically the application is for the license itself, just for the total. Presently, the license at the location is for 18,000 gallons. We're asking to amend that license to add 6,000 gallons, so that the total would be 24. The intent is to leave the existing tanks and gasoline dispensing area as it is existing, and to install a new tank, an additional tank of 6,000 gallons. That additional tank would be split into two 3,000 gallon compartments. In addition, with adding the tank, the existing piping that's in the ground will be replaced or removed from its existing ductwork, and new piping would be put in. The excavation would be limited to the new tank area and the top of the existing tanks, up to the dispenser that, if you're looking at the front of the station, is the front right dispenser, the one closest to the street and towards the right. And from that point, all of the piping would be removed just by withdrawing it from the existing chase and pulling new pipe in. The piping at that location is a flexible type of pipe, and so they won't actually have to excavate around the dispensers. The intent is to make half of the tank, there's two compartments of 3,000. Half of the tank would be for diesel, and so that one or two of the dispensers would have an additional hose for diesel on it. Other than that, there wouldn't be any changes at the locations, so.
Is there diesel there now, or is?
There is not
So this
diesel.
is to add a kind of.
This is just to add
component
that.
also?
Right. We've gone to the Conservation Commission, and we've also, this application as part of the normal process goes through the fire department also, who have all reviewed the plan.
While I understand the license itself runs with the land, who are the principals of 115 Brockton Avenue LLC?
The owner of the property is actually an individual by the name of Zahid Durrani. He's owned the property now, I think, for 4 or 5 years. I'm not sure exactly what date he took it over from the previous owner.
And is he the 100% owner?
I believe that he is. I'm not 100%, but I believe that he is the single owner or single party that controls the LLC.
You know, if you know, I don't know if you know, are they gonna stay open during this construction, or during this installation of new
There's
tanks?
probably going to be some interruption, but the intent is to stay open through as much of it as possible, yes.
So, just on the tank, are you digging out the existing tank?
Nope, the existing tanks will stay there. They'll uncover the tanks down to the top of them. They'll clean off all the equipment that's attached to the top of the tanks, and it'll all be all new equipment that's put in, except they'll probably reuse the tank gauges are there, but they'll put in new risers, new spill buckets, new sumps for the STP, new sensors in the sumps, and then they'll tie that in with the stuff that's going on.
So
in
the new tank would have two compartments, one for Class 1, one for Class 2, one for diesel, one for
Correct.
gasoline?
Yes.
Because it was just a little confused because it said Class 1, 21,000, and diesel at 3,000, which would
Correct.
add up to the 24, but, you know, it says above it that the capacity should be stated on the tank, the full capacity. So it looks like we were putting in a 3,000 gallon tank and a 21,000 tank.
Oh, yeah, no, that's the total of each.
Okay, that's fine.
And basically what happens is the license, as you mentioned, does run with the land, and then over time, the total volume is really what anyone looks at, because if they have to replace the tank 10 years or 20 years from now, whatever, they may put back the tanks in a different configuration, and they may put in a 20,000 gallon tank and a 4,000 gallon tank, I don't know. And at that point, they would, as long as they stay within the license, they'd be authorized to do that without having to
But
come
it
back.
actually is a 6,000 gallon tank you're putting in with two compartments.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what they're putting in now, but that could change in the future if they change it. As long as the total stays the same,
Yep.
that's how it normally runs, yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Guba? Would anybody on the floor
Oh, you have
care
to
to
close the hearing.
No.
Not yet, there's some folks.
stand? Just introduce yourself, first, last name, and address, please.
Stanley Kogut, 27 Rockland Street, Abington. We're abutters of this station. I've been there for 11 years. My wife has been there for 31 years. I don't believe that this is going to be an easy situation, because anything they seem to do, they don't keep their word. One, even they had some pipes brought into the station at the corner of Rockland and Block Street, right? Yeah, Block Street, to bring gas in. And that, over the last couple of years, has dropped a little. They haven't repaired it. You bring it to their attention, they don't care. You've got conservation land behind it that they dumped stuff, and I even went up to the fire department and complained about it. And because they were blocking, they were throwing wood pallets and everything back there. And with all the gasoline and the gas going into the building, the fire department came right down and instantaneously made them take it out. Now, some of it is back there again, because even today, they got somebody down there selling flowers, and they bring them back. I don't know if those people even have a license to sell flowers. According to his operating license says 6 to 11 o'clock at night. He doesn't believe in opening at 6 o'clock. He believes in opening anytime he feels like it from 5 o'clock on. I've gone over there myself and asked him, why are you opening at 5:15 in the morning and starting the car wash? I can do what I want. I said, where's your license? Let me see. Isn't your license and everything supposed to be posted? I don't have to show you nothing. And he's constantly, then he's got trucks delivering over there at 5 in the morning. We live right across the street. My stepdaughter's bedroom, if she didn't have curtain, those lights that he puts on, bang, right into her window, all the time. I had a contractor down there doing some work in the house. We were thinking about trying to sell it, which is tough to do anyways. It was a Sunday morning, early. The buyer was coming in and looking because the contractor was talking to him. All of a sudden, the car wash goes off. Guy turns around, he says, Stan, I'm not interested. I can't be listening to that noise. I've complained about the noise in the past. Now, we're probably one of the only abutters that get aggravated by this. We've been there long before they come. I would like to know if they would like us to move into their neighborhood and create this noise constantly. Now, he wants to put diesel fuel in. Now there's more trucks. It all comes down to dollars and cents. He wants it there. I used to work nights, and the lady behind me and my wife also said they have heard kids over there using the vacuums there at midnight or later. And I know for a fact, I've come home and the car wash has been going off at 5:15 in the morning. Because he's got a floodlights or whatever that come right down onto the entrance of the car wash, so people pull up and think, hey, it's open. But his attitude is he can do whatever he pleases. I don't think it should go on any further.
Thank you, Stan.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. Thank you. Mr. Goober, if I could. I think, listening to the complaints, I think in my own mind, the hearing should probably be continued and allow your client to come in before us at the next meeting, but in concert with that, sit down with the town manager and the abutters to figure out if they can come to some solution. One thing on all licenses I've been a stickler on is hours of operation, and I think if there's a complaint pending before us, I would much rather prefer to see the principal himself come in. And prior to the next meeting, I'm going to make a motion that we continue the hearing. We're not going to, at least in my mind, I don't want to close it because I want to be able to take in more testimony and hear whether the issues have been resolved. But I would urge you, have your client contact the town manager and perhaps get all the parties together, so by the time we have the next meeting, I'd like to be able to hear that these issues are resolved. So with that said, Mr. Chairman, for the purposes of discussion, I'm going to move we continue the hearing till our next meeting, which is February 27th at 6:30 p.m.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Well, I was going to second motion, but I agree wholeheartedly with Kevin. And maybe you could supply us with the existing license and what the hours of operation are, so we do have something.
I have a letter from the zoning board that says 6 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, and that's fine, but
It's all
those are the
stuff we
types
can
of
look
things
at.
that
We can look at
we
later.
would need to see, in talking to all the parties concerned to see where we are, where we at. And the vacuum cleaner, I think, in the middle of the night and stuff like that, those types of concerns, I don't think it's necessary for people to be vacuuming out their cars at that hour in the evening or late at night, and even washing your car. I mean, Usually it means you're up to no good, but when I had to wash my car. But, you know, those types of things. Yeah, just to be fair to the neighbors and everything, I absolutely agree with you wholeheartedly, Kevin.
Okay, Kenny?
I'd also like to make note too that my brother lives directly across the street on Brockton Ave, and he has complained to me in the past before, probably a year ago, about the noise of the vacuum cleaner late at night. It sounds like an aircraft taking off. So, I mean,
Okay.
this isn't the only complaint. So I usually blow him off, but now I'll either get a letter from him or have him come to the next meeting. But
I wasn't aware there was other people.
Yeah,
Can I ask you guys, have you complained to the town?
Absolutely. I have a,
we've been to the Board of Health.
You have?
I have a letter here.
And we have been
I have
to
a
the
letter
zoning board.
going back to '06. I came down here to see somebody in the public health department, okay,
Okay.
about this.
Sure. Yeah.
And the letter says, in response to the complaint that you received and your request to review the zoning board appeals decision concerning the above property, I have found the following. The hours of operation mentioned in the minutes of the meeting are Monday through Saturday, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., with the business also open on Sunday, and a car wash would be open the same hours. Now, we were away on vacation when this meeting, like tonight, that's why I made sure I'm here, came up. Because there's another station right up the street, a mobile station up on 139 and 18, that has restricted car wash hours. And we get it right in our bedroom.
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah, and these are all issues, I think, that'd be proper
Okay.
to deal with the town
But, yeah,
manager, and we'll
there was
continue the
other
hearing, and then we can.
Here, and I had, as I mentioned there, I even went to the town fire department, I'm sure they have it on record, I went up to the, they come down that same day. He says, he won't give me a hard time, because I asked him to move the wood, he wouldn't do it.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, can I ask one, without, pub license, his operating license, his license to sell product and everything, isn't that supposed to be posted publicly?
Yes.
So anybody can walk in and see it?
Correct.
Yes.
He says, no, I don't have to post my license.
Okay, well, we'll get that
Okay,
resolved.
we have a motion and a second to continue the hearing. Before we vote, Mr. Guba, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I'll pass all this information. I took notes while you were making your presentation, and I'll pass that on to the owner.
Okay.
I can't speak to a lot of these other issues.
No,
that are
we
not
understand.
Yeah,
related to
sure.
the
Now,
tanks.
you might be, I have a couple of questions, quick. Were there any mandated hours to fill these tanks? Are they restricted to night filling only or daytime only?
There's no restrictions on the current license. There may be other restrictions that have to do with the site plan or zoning, as the abutter has noted. But on the license itself, the existing license, there's no restrictions.
Okay. Also, you're adding diesel. Is he substituting one of his existing dispensers is he turning it from gas to diesel? He's
No.
not adding a dispenser.
He's not adding a dispenser, the same number of dispensers, the same number of fueling positions. If someone's getting diesel, it will be displacing someone from getting gas. So right now, he has, I believe, 8 fueling positions. It'll still be 8. As far as the concern that this is gonna bring more trucks to the station, that's not the intent of this. It's a very small volume that's going in. The dispenser will be dispensing the diesel at a normal flow rate that's designed for passenger vehicles, not for trucks. So, you know, we do a lot of work in the petroleum industry. I've been doing this for 30 years. And when we do a truck stop, we're looking at a flow rate that will exceed 30 to 50 gallons per minute, because they're buying at volume. And they don't pull into a station that, this will be capped at around 10 gallons per minute. Because if a guy's buying 200 gallons, he's not gonna sit there with his truck for that kind of time in order to be able to fill it. Plus, a normal truck has a fill on both sides. They've got saddle tanks on both sides for a tractor trailer. And that kind of vehicle won't pull in because it's too inconvenient. The hose is not gonna be long enough to get to the other side of the truck. A truck stop is set up where they can fill both sides at the same time on 1 meter, and that kind of setup is not being used here. This is really intended for smaller vehicles, pickups. There's been a lot of push for people trying to get higher efficiency vehicles, greener vehicles. Diesel vehicles get higher mileage. And so it's just trying to offer another product that way.
Okay. If you don't have anything else, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion's closed.
Motion to
Continued,
continue.
I'm sorry, the hearing is continued. We'll reschedule, okay?
So you don't know the date yet, or?
Yeah, February
27th,
27th, 6:30.
February 27th?
Yeah.
So he should get a hold of my office in advance of that to try to work out these issues.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to borrow Deborah DeFranco's gouache. All right. Next on the agenda, we have a request for change of manager at Deanne's Restaurant, 340 Center Avenue. Is Mrs. D'Alessandro here, or Mr. Kokomazzi?
Yes.
How you doing? Would you please take the podium and introduce yourself, please?
My name is Michael Kokomazzi. I'm the owner of Deanne's Restaurant, 340 Center Ave in Abington. I have been the owner of Deanne's in Abington. Actually, we're celebrating our 19th year here this April. And Dottie D'Alessandro has been with me since 2004. She was with me in my Abington location prior to that, in the late 1990s, and then she went over and she was the general manager of my Holbrook restaurant. And when we sold that in 2004, she came over to work for me in the Abington restaurant. She's been on and off with me for close to 40 years. The restaurant's not being sold. I am still the owner. I'll still remain as the owner. I'll be there every day as I am now. It's a little bit of a reward for Dottie for the service that she's given me, a little bit more control over the restaurant and a little bit more authority. And it's basically just a paper transfer. That's all it is.
Any questions for Mr. Kokomazzi? Nope. Any motions?
Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, any further
Mr.
discussion?
Chairman, just one question about the, is Dottie tips trained and
Yes.
certified?
Yes.
Okay, is that information in here?
Tip certified and serve safe.
Is that
Yes,
in
for
here?
food. It wasn't required to put in there, but every year we have to submit to the Selectmen's office a list of all of our tip certified employees, and they're all certified.
And Dottie's
including-
one of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, thank you.
Can I ask a procedural question on that? Now, anytime any business in town that has an alcohol license changes manager, they have to
Yeah.
come in?
Yep,
Now, that wasn't an ownership change, that was just a manager.
Just a manager.
Change anytime.
it's gotta be a manager on record. Okay, next on the agenda, we have with us Stephen Wright here. Okay, Stephen Wright, the SEA Consultants, to give us an update on the landfill at Groveland Street.
Gotcha.
Okay, you know what, while you're doing that, you can approve some minutes. Or something. Town manager report, maybe?
Never get through that.
All right. Has everybody had a chance to look at the meetings, the minutes for January 23rd, 2012, open session?
Move we approve.
Okay, second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, January 23rd, open session is approved. January 26th, open session. Say second, Andy?
No, I said hold on.
Hold on a second.
I'll move it, be approved.
Okay, we have a motion.
With the Board of Health, I was.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. January- Okay, we have an abstention. January 26th, open session is approved, 4-1.
We can fill it right after.
Yeah, we'll fill it. Okay, finally, we have February 3rd, executive session, except
Move we
that
approve.
approved to be, not to be released until all
Not to
matters
be
been settled.
released until,
Okay, second?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Andy, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Who abstains? You were?
Kenny and.
Oh, that was a school one, yeah, okay. All righty. All the meetings have been approved. Dory, did you get those? The minutes for all those meetings have been
We
approved.
have been multitasking with residents.
January 26th was 4-1, with Kevin abstaining.
no,
4-0.
4-0.
4-0, which one was one abstention, Kevin? The
26.
Yeah, 23rd was
The 23rd was
5-0.
5-0, the 26th was 4-1.
One with Kevin abstaining.
Okay, and then executive session, February 3rd was 3-0.
Kenny and Mike abstaining.
Kenny and Mike abstaining. Okay. All right. Steve, you ready? No? That's all right. All right, let's see here.
Yes.
Approval to hang banners in the town for Abington's 300th anniversary.
Better to hang bangers than hang banners. Just saying.
You should have wireless access.
very nice.
Yeah, they do.
There's wireless access in the building.
It says something about hanging banners designed by Abington High School students.
I think that was just for Glenwick's Way, right?
Yes.
Then they need to vote to use a municipal space on the poles.
Yes, I will make a motion that we approve the request to hang banners on the poles as delineated within the public way.
Okay.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
I
Aye.
just want, should we have that under the direction of maybe like the highway superintendent or something, just to make sure we get some municipal outlook on it? Thanks, Ken. No, I don't think there'd be any problem. I mean, you do have to be somewhat careful in this, where you put them.
Yeah, it should be in coordination with him.
Okay, same motion?
Sure.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, it's unanimous. With hang banners. All right. Want to take a 5-minute recess?
Yep.
You gotta get him a new computer for SEA.
You know, Steve can wait a couple, how long's your town manager report, roughly? We're talking about budget stuff? or-
It can go a minute, it can go a couple
Well,
hours.
Ken
We'll take the minute version. We'll take the appetizer version.
Ken, and how long are you gonna take, you think? It's up to you. No, not at all.
come right
Come on up.
It'd take him 20 minutes to get this thing fired up.
I'm gonna be the intermission.
Okay. With us tonight, we have Ken Connell,
Thank you.
Superintendent of
Cannell.
Streets.
Canal.
Cannell, sorry, I know.
All right.
Superintendent of Streets, priority of roads to improve infrastructure and to discuss a $5 million debt exclusion for sidewalks, roads, and drainage.
You could just be there somewhere.
Thank you, Ken.
It's just for kind of a little visual impact.
So that's old school
I was gonna say,
visual.
that's high tech, yeah, that's high tech, but it's ready.
Yeah, and rip off the label of the water bottle for the tape.
It works quick.
Can you see Linton
Quick and
Lane
easy.
on there? That's all I want to know.
Yeah. It's funny you mention that. Anyway, John asked me to come up tonight to have an initial discussion on, as to where we are currently kind of with our roads, where we're looking to the future with road program possibilities, and what kind of expense that might be as we go forward, and how would we possibly fund it. If you look at this map that I've quickly created for you here,
The roads outlined in red are roads that have been paved since I've been here in 1998. Through means of funding through the sewer department, through phases 3 and 4. Sewer installation, a year later after the pipes were installed, we did paving projects, curb to curb on each roadway that was done. An influence from the water department when they did water main replacement projects through SRF funding. We also required curb to curb overlays after a utility installation like that. And then the Chapter 90 road program and our own town funds through the highway department. The roads in green are the roads that are in need of work that were paved prior to my getting here in 1998. You can see it's a large amount of paving that we've done. There's over 100 projects that were paved since I got here. And we have approximately 230 roadways in town. So if you commingle what I have done and what developers have done in the same period of time, which they're also already highlighted, approximately 2/3 of the town has been paved within a period of time, maybe 12 to 14 years. That's a pretty good amount of roadway resurfaced. A lot of towns could never say that. You hear a lot of talk that our roads are in pretty good condition. The problem with that is we did so much condensed work in such a small period of time that it's all going to resurface problematically at the same time as well. So if you look at road life in New England being 8 to 12 years, is going to need some kind of a facelift, some kind of work done. We're getting to that point already from when we started under my time here. So we're trying to figure out a way maybe to go forward with how we're going to manage our future instead of letting our future manage us, because these roads are going to fall apart. You're starting to see it around town already. You can see sewer trenches that are collapsing at an acceptable level, because when you install pipes, you have a 5% allowance of compaction that can settle out after time. So you start to see trenches in the roadway years later after they've been paved. And we're starting to see that. And then once you have a crack, without maintenance, some type of a maintenance, whether it's a crack seal, a chip seal, a micro paving, or something to extend the life of the pavement, it's going to start to deteriorate and come apart. So unfortunately, that's starting to happen. And that, coupled with our short staff and budget reductions and layoffs and everything that we've had, we're having a very difficult time keeping up. And I know you're starting to hear, from resident complaints and things. People are starting to mention that their roadways haven't been worked on, and we're trying. We try to sweep and clean and do what we can to the best of our ability. But at some point, you need to put some funding into the programs. So we started to discuss the possibility of a bonding issue. Maybe develop a program, and that will entail also keeping our good roads good. So, some of our recent paving needs to be kept up, because we're at the point now that we wait until the road's almost all the way gone before we get in and do any work to it, significant work, milling and paving, that, we're already failed before we start. So we need to get into a better maintenance program, and that costs money. We receive about $300,000 from our state Chapter 90 program. This year coming ahead, you can see in the blue that Route 139 is highlighted. That's where we intend to go out with our monies this year. And we won't have enough to do the entire roadway. So we're going to take it as far as we can, which we're going to begin at Chestnut Street and work our way back towards 139. But it's a very wide roadway. Setting curbing is expensive. We need to meet ADA compliance when we resurface a road under the state programs. So it adds up very quickly. An example of that's the PWED project we just did in North Abington Center. We spent $1.7 million. We did about 6,000 feet of roadway and sidewalk improvements with landscaped, fixtures and things like that. But it adds up quick, and we don't get very much funding, and it's the only funding that we have for our infrastructure, really. Our regular budget is so limited. We have about $20,000 for materials, and about the same for outsourcing contractors when we need them under the regular budget. So we're lucky that we can patch potholes and take care of what we do.
Thanks, Ken.
Just a question.
Mike?
Ken, your proposal, do you have a time frame? And the second part of the question is, Is your intent to do all the roads that haven't been done?
First of all, I haven't really developed a formal proposal yet.
Yeah.
This is just an initial discussion to let you know that we're going to have needs as we move forward, and unfortunately, they're going to come together quite quickly because all the paving was done at the same time, basically, or a lot of it anyway. We will develop a program. We actually, when I first came here, we had a cartograph system software pavement management program. Unfortunately, we didn't support it. We didn't keep the data entry clerks that I had. We didn't keep investing in the program to, to keep it up to snuff, so it could tell you what to do on a certain road at a certain time. Factoring every road gets graded and weighed by, the age of the pavement, what application was done to it already, what it needs. And there's a lot of overlays that are built into that too, which we're actually getting a presentation tomorrow that might entwine with that. At our staff meeting, we have a GIS program demonstration tomorrow. And there's a lot of overlay capabilities within the departments, the sewer department, the water department, the highway department, police, fire. And it can all be incorporated into building onto a road program. So there's some technology that can help us develop a program so we can come forward with a plan so we can give you some kind of an estimate. We had some early talks about the possibility of a bonding issue, maybe a 5-year bonding issue. The amount's not determined, I don't think, at this time.
We had estimated, a proposed estimate of about $5 million a year for 5 years.
$5 million a year
Like
for
5 million a
5
year?
years?
No.
$1 million a year for 5 years.
Okay.
$5 million in total. I'm sorry.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
Now, that $1 million worth of work per year proposed, that would be done in-house? Does that include subcontract work?
No, we subcontract. We mix it up. We subcontract the heavier stuff, the paving. We may do structure adjustments, things like that. I do a lot of the layout. We've saved a lot of money in engineering over the years by doing that. You can see we've done quite a bit of it. Reprofiling, things like that. We do a lot of leveling, but we sub out the paving itself. We sub out line painting. We sub out portions of the job. It's typical.
The reason why this is more of a priority now is that while pavement prices are going to be what they are as a result of war, and there's a strong correlation between the two, the cost of labor is probably cheaper today than it will be 5 years from now, as the economy hopefully begins to heat up or pick up in some way, shape, or form. So when you're looking at these types of projects, whether you're building a school or you're looking at capital infrastructure needs such as what we're talking about here, the time to capitalize on cheap labor is now, not 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So this is something that we're going to need to look at very seriously in a very short period of time.
The only catch to that is that we're required to pay prevailing wages, and that goes in line.
Oh, that's right, I forgot one in Massachusetts.
Does this include the sidewalks? I know you've repaved a number of the roads, but a lot of the sidewalks are in.
It's definitely required when we do road improvement that we meet ADA compliance. So that factors in. Now, this town, I've been urging the planning board since I've been here to kind of get away from some of the curbing around town, because just to reset a curb line is $14 a lineal foot. And then after that, you have to get involved with the sidewalk that's next to it that you tore up, when you started to work on the curb. So you could basically double that. So it adds up very quickly. You can look at the sidewalk projects that we've done on Hancock Street and Lincoln Street, $300,000 projects.
Okay.
When are you going to come back with a solid proposal?
Well, I think we're going to start to, to look at this within the capital budget in the fall. Okay. It has not been on the capital budget to date, but the need has been there for a number of years. So we're looking at trying to find a funding mechanism to meet the need. And we'll be at the capital budget process with this in the fall.
And I just kind of wanted to get it clearly put out there that we're working with just about $300,000 from the state funding, and that is definitely going to be eaten up on a project like 139 this year. One of our primary roadways, heavily traveled, and it's in a bad condition that it needs to be done. So it's not leaving us anything really to work with on our subdivision roadways and other things in town. We're fortunate that a lot of it's in pretty good order, but there are some that aren't.
Now, Ken, you said that any road you work on now has to be ADA compliant?
If we improve a roadway with
Sidewalks.
Chapter 90 money, we have to make it ADA compliant.
Okay, so any road that gets paved now, does that mean it?
It doesn't mean we add sidewalks.
Doesn't mean you add
If there's
sidewalks.
if there's existing walkways there now, we need to make them compliant.
Okay.
A lot of the old ramps and things aren't compliant by today's standard.
You need the bumps,
You need the bumps.
the bumps.
yeah,
and
The
blind.
correct slope and
Yeah.
grade.
Okay. Does anybody, Kenny?
I just have a question. This is basically an all or nothing thing also, because I mean, if you go $1 million for 1 year, you kind of want the guarantee, although you can't really do a guarantee, but you want to have $1 million for the next 4 years after that, correct? Because if you do 1 year funding and then say, sorry, there's no money this year, it kind of puts the whole plan in jeopardy.
It's what we deal with our state funding every year.
Yeah.
Every year, we're wondering, are we going to get a supplement? Are we going to get what we got last year? There's been years we've been cut back. It's a bond bill every year.
But you are correct, yes. I think it's important that if we put this kind of capital project forward, that we have some continuity and consistency over a period of time in order to get the construction work completed.
And as part of this, you're gonna prioritize which roads need to be done, because the 5 million wouldn't cover the whole town, I would imagine, right?
Right, like I started a program like that begins to rank the roadways and things, and you would need to. You can't really come out and put a menu out, or you're weighing neighbor against neighbor, and you're starting fistfights at town meeting, and you don't want that kind of a thing. But you want to manage what we have to do.
Yeah, you have to use some objective standard, I would think.
Correct.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, if someone has a question for Ken.
I just wanted to ask if my street was done, we don't have curved sidewalks, but we have sidewalks, and the sidewalks weren't done. And they don't have curbs, so that can still be done even though the street doesn't need to be done?
Yeah, it's mainly where the access points would be for the ramps that's looked at for the crosswalks at the apex of the road is typically what we go after first, but we can't afford to do all of the walkways. In pretty bad shape. Which road?
The upper end of Central,
Huh?
the sidewalk is bad.
Really? Okay. That was one of the first roads, I think, when I came here.
The road's great,
Yeah.
sidewalks.
Yeah. And we had a sidewalk program in our capital plan and a drainage program that we have the capability of doing sidewalks ourselves. We have the equipment. We no longer have the manpower, but we have the equipment to do the work. And we were funding it annually at $40,000 in the capital plan to get out and do quite a bit of sidewalk work, which we began to do. And unfortunately, that's been pulled back.
Chris, I have one question. It has nothing to do with this. One of the town employees that everyone knows very well was injured.
Yeah.
And do you have an update for the board? Could you give us?
I was actually asked not to talk too much about that,
Okay.
but,
All right. Okay.
yeah, we're just praying and hoping for him to come along.
Sorry, that was terrible. All right, does anybody have anything else for Ken? Okay, thank you, Ken, for coming.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks a lot. I'm sure we'll talk more. I hope I didn't.
No? Okay. Are you ready to go, Steve? Okay, hold on a second. Take a 2-minute recess? Let's take a 2-minute recess. Landfill on Groveland Street. Mr. Wright?
Update on the old landfill. This is probably somewhat of a repeat for some of you. It's to revisit the focus with on the post-closure use, the direction that the town may want to take for what to do with the site after it's been assessed and capped, and integrating that desired post-closure use into the design. Now, we went through this as far back as 2006, when the DEP was suggesting, do you ever think about bringing in contaminated soils, mildly impacted soils, to help defray the cost of closure? Meanwhile, we had the work at the base going on nearby, and I think there were more resources at the time for taking in these impacted soils. And so, at the same time, the consent order was in negotiation, early stages between DEP and the state for the site. And so again, the DEP was really advocating, give some serious thought to bringing this material in. There aren't many sites out there that can take it anymore. Now, that may have changed somewhat now that we're where we are now, but there's still the potential to bring in that type of material. And at the time that we presented options, it was all predicated on varying degrees of how much soil you could take in, and then what types of post-closure uses could you maybe take advantage of out there. So quickly, just to bring this forward to everyone, this matrix was the backbone of how we identified what were 9 options ultimately. So you see on the left-hand side in the column there, it's post-closure use scenarios. Doing no post-closure use, a partial post-closure use, which would mean taking advantage of maybe a portion of the site, not the entire site for a post-closure use, and then a full post-closure use, which would be doing things in the front part of the site and the back part of the site. If you're familiar with the site, I'm sure all of you are, it's very long from Groveland Street, and the composting area up front is about 4 acres. And then it's divided by a culvert, if you will. I mean, you can freely access the back part, but the back part's been sort of left fallow for years and years and years, probably since '75. And it's that back part that there is an encroachment on private property, the T2 property. But that total landfill area in the back part is about 8 acres. So you've got 2/3 in the back, 1/3 in the front. So taking full post-closure use is thinking maybe not 12 acres, but both front and back. And then on the top, you see soil reuse scenarios, and those were varying degrees. Maximizing how much you could bring in to max out the site with imported material. Then an intermediate amount, establishing some in between from nothing to a maximizing amount. What would be an intermediate amount? Now, in terms of quantities, the maximum, to max out that site, no post-closure use, no composting, no nothing, just max out the front and the back, was about 150,000 yards of material. At $10 a yard, ballpark numbers that we were using, still as reasonable today as it was in 2006, you'd be talking about $1.5 million potential revenue. Intermediate soil, what worked out was about 85,000 yards. It worked that way for the purposes of some of the post-closure use scenarios, one of them being ball fields in the back part of the site. So you're not maxing everything out. You're not making a dome out of it. You're going somewhere where you'll have a plateau area left. And then no soil import, there's no revenue. So on the 85,000, it was about $850,000 estimated revenue. So in those boxes is how all the, and you can see, full post-closure use by maximum soil import. You can't get any post-closure use if you dome everything with soil. But that's how all the scenarios laid out. And so here they are in the same sort of array. And the option that was chosen by the town, and 2 and 3 are similar, but if you look at this to just get a full sweep of all of them, you can see number 1 is all those contour lines, that's just filling to that 150,000. And then you'll see these profile lines below, so you can see the hill effect that you get with those. If you look at 1, you go down to option number 2, and you see we're not filling much in the front part of the site on option number 2, with the purposes of what if you wanted to build a ball field out there. Option number 3, instead of a ball field, and the prices were about the same, if you did some recycling area and composting operations, essentially trying to mimic what you do now, or have the capacity to do what you do now with a little more recycling. And it was that option that was chosen after 3 public meetings, and the DEP required these public meetings in connection with bringing these soils in. It's all part of the policy. So right now, the town has gone through that process. It has adopted, for the purposes of a concept, option number 3. Max out the back part of the site, which, actually, I'm sorry, that was 150,000 yards of material on that. Option number 1 was 225,000 yards of material.
So option 3 is 150,000 yards?
Yeah, so that's maxing out the back part of the site.
Now, the back, can I just stop you for a second?
Sure.
The back part of the site, meaning from Groveland Street in, the way back?
It's behind the composting area and
Okay.
back.
Yep.
So it's not touching the front part where the composting area is, essentially.
Now, when you say maxing out the site,
Maxing out the fill
the
in the
fill,
back
you
part.
mean like when you drive down Route 24 and you see everything high up, you know, when they cap these things, it's raised up?
What you would be doing is, right now, if you look at the landfill right now, take a look at option number 7. Now, granted, it's not gonna show you a lot, but it's fairly flat. There are slopes at the existing landfill. I mean, I got a figure for that, I flipped through to it. Basically, by taking in material in the back part of the site, you're going from the existing toe. You don't expand beyond the limits of the landfill, but you go from the toe that you have right now, and you're just bringing it up at a 3-to-1 slope until you can peak it off. And that's what those contours show in option number 1. We did it in the front and the back. Option 2, we just did that, peaking it off in the back. The other alternatives were, again, looking at fields. Fields were a point of interest at the time, and we looked at synthetic fields versus natural turf fields, and I'm not sure how much traction. It didn't seem to get a lot of traction, and I think in terms of a more desperate need or desired need was to be able to maintain the operations that you do now with the composting.
In terms of the compost site, as it relates to methane, are there going to be any buildings? And I guess I was involved in the closing of 2 landfills, and I've had my fill of,
Landfills?
dealing with, landfills and dealing with DEP on the issue. And I guess in terms of, the only concern I would have right now is in terms of the current regs. If we were to build something out as the current regs state, what is the probability of the regs changing down the line? And I know, the reason I ask this, because I went through a situation where a portion of the landfill was capped to standards back in the 1970s. DEP came in after, and we argued and said, look, this has been capped. And they said, oh, no, it's not capped to today's standards. So they made us, through an ACO, go out and recap that portion of the landfill that, we thought was capped. And I guess having been through it, and I know it's probably asking you to look into a crystal ball, and it's probably not a fair question, but having been through it, my questions would be, if we're going to do improvements at that location, is there some sort of covenant? Would DEP entertain some sort of covenant that would, forever allow that particular operation there? Or sometime down the line, would we get caught up in if their attitude is, well, gee, you're just going to have to wait and see, that's...
Well, my guess would be what happened in the circumstances you're talking about is that there was record that something was done, but there was no formal approval from the state that they had approved of it.
Mm-hmm.
If there was, that would have been the mechanism to not have to do anything else in that particular instance. There was a little bit of that shadowing here with Abington. Abington had done something back in '75, but there was no documents that could be found anywhere that demonstrated where it was done, how it was done.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't much of a battle to be waged to say, look, can't we grandfather this? So you're starting off with whatever you do as part of this landfill assessment and closure process. Whatever option you select for post-closure would get folded into the design for the closure design. And the DEP reviews it, issues an approval letter, and then at the end of the construction, they get documentation that confirms it was built according to the plans you submitted. Once you get that certification report, that's you can't come back on us now. This has been approved by you.
Okay. And as it relates to methane and constructing the recycling, and it's been a while, so has the Scientology in terms of methane containment and release, has that been improved, or is it still recommended that you don't put buildings on top of?
Well, the building aspect is, methane is a piece of it. The bigger part of the concerns with building on a landfill is just the structural support component of it. methane becomes another additive to that. You may have a landfill that doesn't generate any gas, and you're still gonna have the structural support issues. And you'll still likely, as a default, have to provide some protective measures to the building foundation system, whether it's a spray-on membrane that goes under the foundation. It can be done. Now, the vision here, would there be a building here? We've never really gone that far. It's all been site-related work. We've done enough on we started the comprehensive site assessment process where we're getting field data. There is landfill gas in the back part of the site. And if you look at contours, like, I'm going to trip myself here. I can see this. But if you look at this option here, this is pretty much roughly how the landfill is now. It's not as steep as these grades show. It's flat here, it's a hill in the back. We're not getting any gas from a gas well we put here. We're getting no landfill gas in the front part of the site. If you can rely on it being representative of what's really happening in the front part of the site, and I think it's probably pretty safe, because the fill is very shallow there. The wetlands are right on either side. We probably have about 12 or 15 feet of fill. It's not a big gas generator.
Would the wetlands contribute to naturally occurring methane at all?
It could. It could. Yeah, you can always get some type of swamp gas from decomposition. But in the landfill, it's unlikely. We have another gas well in the back part of the landfill, and that's generating gas. Not problematic, other than just when we design a venting system, that if there's a breathing zone issue, if there was a post-closure use in the back part of the site, we would want to take that data and run it through like a dispersion model to see how would this affect the venting system. So I think, in terms of answering your question, is the state of the art changed? Not so much. I mean, if there is a building that goes into the front part of the site, I'd be more concerned about just making sure that the structural support system is adequate. You can design the gas protection system.
Okay, last question, and I'll shut up. Is, on terms of the methane on the I'm going to call it the active area of the old landfill, are the readings as such that a simple venting would be allowed, or would it have to be a pilot, a lit?
There's not, the size of this landfill is not such that it would trigger any default requirement for like an active gas collection system with a flare. Even the back part of the landfill right now is shallow. It's probably 25 to 35 feet thick at its thickest. That's not a lot of gas. If you put in an extraction system out there, you'd be paying a lot of money for something that you'd probably have a hard time keeping lit. There's no driver to have to do that at this point. And with respect to bringing materials in, one of the other types of material that you can bring in is C&D waste, construction and demolition debris. And that's always had, if it's got a lot of gypsum in it or drywall, that generates landfill gas. And there have been instances where there'd be this rush of bringing in C&D material to a landfill that's getting ready to close, and you're bringing in a large volume of that material, and they close it, and all of a sudden you have gas problems that you never had before. And it's because of the decomposition of this new material. And as part of all the vetting of these options to the town, was that it would never be the intention to bring in C&D material. It was only going to be soil-based material, so it wouldn't contribute to some new environmental issue.
And would there be, one more question, in terms of stumping, I know the other issue I ran into was we allowed stumps to be brought in, and then ended up having to grind them up because they classified as a stump dump. But at the time, it was thought that if you brought them in and buried them, and maybe it went to your issue of then it broke them down. In this particular plan, is it wholly just bringing in soils to deal with it?
If the town were to go that way.
Okay.
And it's not, just because the town selected an option, I think, this is more of what, to bring this forward now, is to, okay, these are all well and good, is in terms of concepts that were presented in 2006 and 2007. Have things happened since then that might change the post-closure use desire, or change the town's feeling about importing any material? As of right now, though, if you chose to bring in material, you could say you've gone through some of the activities that the DEP requires you to go through, if that is the direction the town wants to take. Certainly, you got some abutters out there. Part of the reason of making it a public process in vetting options is that people can come to the public meetings and they can express their concerns. And all these options, we looked at potential truck traffic, and how would you control the delivery of this material? Would it just be let it out there, let all sorts of contractors come in? And that was not the basis of how we were proposing to do this. It would be a publicly bid to a contractor that would have controls put on him to bring that material in, time of day, routes to the site, how to maintain grade and control, and make sure Conservation Commission was involved in that process. So that framework has been established. The question is, now that we're getting into the assessment process and getting environmental data, at the end of, in August, we'll have what we believe will be the last of the assessment data to put our report together, so that by the end of the year, this time next year, the comprehensive site assessment report will be into the state, which will speak to what did we find through this monitoring program. Once we get through that, the next phase is looking at alternatives for how you're going to close the site, because the idea is, all right, we have the environmental information. We now know what we need to do to address those environmental issues. Some of them may be a little bit more different than just capping, but if everything goes well, it's just a capping plan. So once you get into the alternatives analysis, one of the alternatives may be keying in on one of these and folding it in to different alternatives. We're not going to do anything, or we're going to put composting here, or we also want to import fill, and working that into the presentation to the state so that now they get the next step in the process and they see, okay, we see how you're bringing something forward, you're advocating something in your alternatives analysis, because that ultimately is what the town's supposed to do, is pick the preferred option. The state knows that option 3 was selected. They know that through the initial site assessment. We gave them a report. We told them this is what the town selected. The town is not committed to going with this, but they have passed some of the hurdles and have officially adopted this as a possibility. And that was it. The state's not pushing for it. They're not, you've looked into it, you got it on the side. As we get through the assessment and we get it, the assessment, the comprehensive site assessment is done, it's coming up on the town to start really thinking about what do we really want to hone in on and focus on for an alternative for post-closure use. If it's option 3, it's option 3. If it's not option 3, it's something a little bit different, or a mix and match. It pays to start thinking about it. I think that's why John wanted to just kind of put it out there tonight, to just get that dialogue going. So, I don't know if there are any questions about that.
Could you explain the green versus the gray area?
Yeah, I'm sorry. At the time that this was done, we hadn't done the test pitting program. We had just gotten the survey. So again, this is about 2006. That gray area, we didn't know whether the landfill extended into that area. It's about 2 acres in size. And to us, it didn't matter whether it did or didn't, because if we would need area for stormwater management, so that was going to be at least half that area, and the other half is like wetlands. So it's not like we were going to fill over there, even if it was the landfill, so it didn't seem like it was much of a viable place to do filling. As it turns out, about half of that area is the landfill. The half that's closest to the baseball field in option 2, that gray area, this area here is landfill. This area is not. And I will, let's see, I don't know if I should. So these were just all the different options, and we talked about the quantity of material, estimated how long it would take to deliver, the quantity we were talking about, how many trailer loads, how much fill would be in the front part of the site versus the back part of the site, and then revenue estimates. So I don't want to necessarily belabor any of it. There's 3. So when Susan asks about the gray areas, it's the brown area in this, obviously.
Now, it's been a couple of years since the town chose option 3, and I know since then there's been talk of putting solar panels at different parts of town. Now, looking at that proposed grade in the gray at the bottom, because this Groveland site was mentioned as a potential site for a solar farm. You're probably not the guy to be answering this question, but it doesn't look like you could put a solar farm on that.
That, you wouldn't do it there, as a matter of fact, if you flip through, so now, look at this one, this is the intermediate fill option. This is the 85,000 yards of material, and again, it's predominantly, obviously, in the back part of the site. We'd end up, I'm sorry that that's a little bit out of focus, but the back part of the site would end up getting a maximum of 15 feet of fill. You end up with a plateau area of about 3 acres. Now, 3 acres isn't gonna quite get you a megawatt, by the rule of thumb. 4 acres.
4 acres a megawatt.
So, but again, it gives you some idea of potential under even an option like this. If you were to import some material, and what would you have left for usable flat area? So that's that. Then, I mean, you get more area. So here are the ball fields again, and then combine ball fields in the front, and composting in the front, ball fields in the back. So option 7, this is the option that was up in the upper right-hand corner, where you're not importing anything. There's no defrayed cost because you're bringing in soils. No soils get brought in. So here you have 4.5 acres. So as much as this is a almost 12 acre site, to talk about it in terms of developable for solar, unless they're going to be putting things on, and north is that way. So south facing is kind of like the narrow dimension. You're not going to get a lot of slope use on this site. And once you start to take the slopes, it adds up on a landfill. Sometimes they talk about putting solar panels on slopes. It's complicated to do it. How you deck it, how you bridge it, how you support it. Predominantly what developers are looking for are good plateau, 5% slopes, not exceeding, maybe 10%. But after that, it's like to stay away from side slopes. So here you can see, all right, out of a 12 acre site, if you're gonna dedicate the front 4 acres to your composting, because that's essentially what's gonna happen. You may only need 2.5 acres, but everything that's left around the edges isn't gonna be stacked with solar panels, I wouldn't imagine. You get the back part of the site, that's 8 acres, and then roughly what you get is this 4.5 acre left over. You end up losing a fair amount of acreage all along the edges. Now, you could probably build that out a little bit more.
Steve, just a question in relationship to the brown area. Can you define what's going on there?
Yeah, let me, like what that means in that particular graphic, let me show you something here. Here we go. So now, here we are reoriented. That's the real limits as a result of our assessment activities. So in that light tan, that's all the portion of on the left-hand side that is off the town's property on T2. The area that was in that brown chunk was all of this.
Now, that's not the town land?
Everything from there over,
But we
that
took-
different color is on T2.
But that's gonna be our land. Right? Isn't that
That's-
part of the taking?
Yeah. That's T2?
It's the
T to
driving
green.
range.
Yeah.
Oh, the driving range.
Yeah.
there.
No comments.
So we've assumed the bottom right, we've assumed that bottom right piece,
Correct.
the Lauria piece, we've already assumed that,
Town meeting.
and then that upper left.
If we were to incorporate the rest of this, of the T2 site, how many additional acres are you talking?
Well, you get, everything that I presented earlier was the assumption that the town had the acreage. So-
Okay, okay. So there's no difference,
No.
except for this area right here.
Yeah, and that's
And
tough
that's
to work with.
problematic?
There's a lot of wetland in that area. That's one of the, there's a zone, you can see this green line that cuts through there, this line here. That's a wetland line. One of the things with this landfill that we found, it's a complicating factor from a permitting and design perspective. There is material that is in the wetland.
Is it municipal fill material?
Yeah, I mean, it's some of it, there's tires, it's just a mix of different materials that we have to address in some form or function. And it adds up to a fair amount of acreage. There's a lot on the right-hand side, you can see that same green line. Same thing over there, that it was so soft, we couldn't even get out that far. So we're assuming it for the current purposes, that it does go and extend to that limit. That corner there it's mounted, it's ledgy. It's hard, that's one of the reasons why we never even factored it into like an area that you could bring material into. It's just, it wasn't gonna set itself up for usable land. And there's an old cease and desist that's on the abutting property where that inset graphic is. It's up in that area there. So one of the things that, I used to talk about with respect to acquiring some section of that property where the landfill has encroached over onto the T2 property, was don't take more than what you need, because you don't want to take the cease and desist portion where there's an issue with whatever filling was done in the back part of the site there, again, behind that inset graphic. Because, I could see the state potentially, well, you got something there you got to deal with too. And right now, they are separate and distinct, and if you were to acquire or subdivide and pull some, just to make sure that the lines, because you can see some contouring here, up in this zone right here. Now, I don't have anything that ties together the cease and desist from over here to this property. I think it's more over here, but I don't know, and it's something that we'd want to pin down, so when it comes to acquiring, that the line is right. It gives you enough room here to do what you need to do, that you're not taking more than what you need.
Yeah, we're not.
And this whole, the whole concept of importing fill material or any post-closure use has always been predicated on a resolution to that encroachment. You can't excavate all that. We know that it would be a massive undertaking, and you really don't have any place to put it. You can't fold it, you have nothing left. You just wouldn't do it. It would be ridiculously costly to try to do that, and impractical. So it's an acquiring that land, and only once you acquire it, then you have the ability to start using it, filling on it. It's been sort of a speculative discussion for as long as that is an unresolved issue. The dark brown, it has been resolved. That's what triggered everything with the state back in 2003 or 2004, was the desire of that abutter to build a house there, and they found that encroachment there. So the town's resolved that, having that strip of land right there. So that's a good thing. DEP knows that that's been resolved. It's good positive action. This is one that if they don't push on it when we submit the CSA report, this next report, I gotta figure that the state's gonna be curious to know what's happening with this larger encroachment.
Steve, you lost me a little bit on the part with the tires and stuff, the encroachment part. How would we handle that? You said we couldn't bury it, or the ledgy part, the green arrow?
In that front corner there?
Yeah, what would the proposal be to deal with that particular issue?
Well, you would cap it. You wouldn't dig that area out, that lower lobe, this area here. But this area in here is wetland.
Okay.
And if it truly goes, so we're following a contour there, because it was just too wet, we could not get out there. But we know that along the edge, we still had some trash. May not be real thick lens of it, but there's waste material there. So from a conservative perspective, if you accounted for this as having to be cleaned up, we wouldn't necessarily recommend filling on here, because it is wet. We'd be more inclined to want to reclaim that portion of the wetland, pull whatever's in there, bring it back into here, and then do the capping of the dry land in this area here. Stormwater management's still going to be tough on this side. I mean, the site is, there's wetlands all around it. Where we do stormwater impoundment, this isn't an ideal area either. This is ledgy, at least it's clean, but it's not like a low-lying area that makes it easy to infiltrate or anything like that. So those are the things we start to look at in the alternatives analysis, how we handle those types of things. And the other thing that I mentioned, when I was talking about some waste material, this is the other picture. that I think it's just with time, and there's peat underlying this whole area, this was all wetland at one time, that the weight of the fill that's been put in here, some of it just, it can sponge out and just find itself as you add more and more onto this to push out. And that was one of the things with importing material, where we wanted to do a settlement analysis, that we want to contribute to that even more with any soil we bring in. So, I zipped through, this was the impacted soils, the things that we would do to control how it could be brought in, bid it separately, get DEP approval of this type of document, bid document, because they do look for certain, to make sure you have erosion control devices, establishing payment methods aimed really at so that the residents would know it wasn't going to be the Wild West, that this would be put out to bid. We'd have responsible bidders and get the best price for the town based upon the bids, and then control it, how it comes in, erosion control, dust control, those types of things. And those are the options again. That's our landfill, and then this is a base plan. This is very hard to read, and I only put this in here because I think it might be one of the things, I'm sure I gave it to you, John, in the email. This shows, it's just hard to read, sampling locations, topography, and then there was a schedule here of when things were happening. So it's an update on the assessment side of things. The top part of the schedule shows that we're looking at completing the environmental monitoring by August 2012. We have to do 4 rounds of soil gas and groundwater. And if there are no issues.
That's ongoing now.
Yes.
Well, some of it is, some of it still has to be financed.
Yeah, part 1 is ongoing, is okay, we have. It's 3, 4, 5, 6, that's all.
Yes, but it's, the initial monitoring is on.
Yeah.
Can we talk about that? How many on-site monitoring wells do you have?
We have the 3 groundwater, let me go to the other one. I don't know if you can see them in red, that's ringed around, it's hard to see them.
We have
One in the middle.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And those are different.
Yes.
Those are different from the gas
The
monitoring.
gas wells, here's.
They're in the back.
Well, the gas wells are here. That's a gas well in the landfill, and that's a gas well right there. That's a groundwater monitoring well, groundwater monitoring well, groundwater monitoring well. Piezometer, which is intended to pick up surface water and groundwater, and then another piezometer there, which is also a groundwater monitoring point.
What's been the results?
Yeah.
The groundwater looks pretty good. There's not a lot.
It's not going
We also have a private well that's on the T2 property, and there's a private well at 305 Brockton. I don't know if you can see that over there, but that's down this corner here. One-time monitoring, the DEP.
That's a private one, artesian well?
Yeah, it's private, it's a
Yeah.
bedrock well, it's very deep. And so we're not seeing anything in the private wells, and in the monitoring wells around the landfill, there's a little bit of VOCs, no metals, nothing triggering, like exceeding standards. The 2 piezometer locations, we installed those with the hope that we could get groundwater from them. They are so silty that we're not really able to retrieve groundwater data from them. We can get surface water, but that's kind of apples and oranges. So one of the things that I need to do is coordinate with the state about the fact that those 2 piezometers are dubious in their value as groundwater monitoring locations.
But the other wells have not yielded any contaminants
But
beyond
they-
what's
that's right.
what's deemed unsafe.
Right. Now, to me, from the first, and this is coming from 1 round of groundwater data, we have to get 3 more rounds. One of the things that I see is a discussion point with the state, as I talk to them about a couple of piezometers, and how do we reestablish a usable monitoring point for groundwater purposes. I think we can do it with PZ1 is down off the road. That, I don't know if you can see, but it's off Groveland Street's down here. And one of the drawbacks with that all along is thinking, how close is it to the road? Because the intent is to have that be an upgraded location. Groundwater flow comes from the north, comes from the south, it meets and it heads off. And the idea is that that's up gradient, that's up gradient, that's cross gradient, if you will. This is down gradient, down gradient. If we had to reestablish or put in a traditional monitoring well, we're trying to stay away from that for cost purposes if this was going to work for us. If we're getting difficulty now, we could move it across the street. There would be a place for us to put another well in. That may be a better indicator of up gradient than what we're getting right off the road there. PZ2, which is right after the culverts that go through the landfill, if we have to reestablish that point, and I don't think it's that important from a groundwater purpose, it's more from a stream perspective, that's tricky because we don't have very far to go before we're off town land. And I can almost see advocating not needing to get more groundwater data there. We have it from MW3, it should be representative of, MW3 is the one on the right-hand side further north. The one thing, though, that has been sometimes an issue with the state, as of late, is sediment impacts. And that's the only thing I see right now from a round of data is sediment impacts to that stream. Some exceedances of ecological standards, if you will. Not to human impact, but ecological, like call it Bugs and Bunny type of thing. There are concentrations that are established that we have to compare to that would be indicators of a potential negative impact to fauna, yes. And we do have a little bit of lead at both locations, both PZ1 and PZ2. Higher at PZ2 as we get into the landfill. And I think that may lead to some, that'll lead to some discussion with what does that mean and how involved you get with trying to evaluate sediment or stream impacts.
So this environmental monitoring period ends in August 2012?
That's when the fourth round is scheduled to be done.
Now, what if it yields no contaminants above the level deemed to be harmful?
Well, you'll probably get some exceedances here and there, but they won't, if the first round is any indicator, that wouldn't trigger necessarily having to do anything beyond a standard closure. At a minimum, the town is, regardless of how the monitoring data comes back, would be looking at a standard closure because it's an unlined landfill.
What if something comes back really, really dangerous? Is it going to change these proposals?
Those options that we looked at? It could. It doesn't jump out to me as to what it would be, though. Because when you make a statement like that, you know, the high-end type of things that you may need to deal with is like pump and treat, which is very unusual, very rare, that you'd have contamination going on that you'd actually need to capture it and recover it. A lot of times, if you've got groundwater contamination, the biggest issue is get people on public water. It doesn't necessarily change anything that you do on the site. Here, the only 2 wells we had in 500 feet of the site were the 2 that we're testing, and we're not seeing anything. So what's the other issue you have? A landfill gas migration issue. We're not getting any gas migration. We have some, it's not shown on this figure, but in that brown slip right there, we have some gas wells in that front corner for those homes that are down in that corner. There's no migration showing. We've got no gas in the well in the landfill, so that doesn't seem to be presenting a complication. So you can design around whatever you might find. And nothing's occurring to me that that you're going to find yourself into that circumstance.
So Steve, as a follow-up from a financial perspective, if I read your Table 1 correctly, for FY13, you're looking at $313,000, 133 plus 180.
Yeah, and that 180 ties into the whole issue of impact, importing impacted soils, and settlement analyses, and bidding, putting specs out on the street, and bidding the project, and providing oversight, and.
That's just for impacted soils?
Yeah, and for a 3-month period, construction, having on-site monitoring for that. I don't know, at this point, that's a real floater, John, as to where that falls in. I don't, it's a placeholder.
Well, as we, move forward with the budget, we're gonna need to have more than just a floater. We're gonna need to have some, certainty as to what those potential costs are for FY13 with an FY15 closure of about 3.6 million. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's, when I say floater, the number floats a little bit, but certainly the timing of it also floats.
Yeah.
Because again, where does the land acquisition sit with all this too? Where is that real? How far off is that? I mean, you're gonna be doing something in FY 2013 when you don't even know when you can get on the property if you even wanted to bring material in there, it's.
I don't know what the timeline is for that proposed project.
Yeah.
Over there.
Well,
Can we treat this like the road project and $1 million a year for 3 years? I mean, you're looking at $3 million cost approximately.
Yeah, at least.
I mean, if you look at it that way, rather than at the end say you need to come up with $2 million, maybe $1 million for, FY 13, 14,
Well,
and 15.
I think that's a great observation. When we look at the cost of 3.6, does that incorporate any amount of mitigation? And when I say mitigation, I'm saying mitigating the amount of money by taking contaminated
No.
soils.
The
And that's
deduct
the
is bottom line
1.5?
there, yeah, if you took in the 150. So that's the estimate there for what the drawdown would be.
But that then definitely kicks in the 180 if we take in the contaminated soil. Let's say we don't take in the contaminated soil. Let's say we can get a developer to come in and develop that parcel from a solar perspective and looking at the additional land. I looked at option 7. I thought option 7 was 4.5 acres. That's a little over a megawatt of electricity. Don't know if that happens to be enough to look at some investors to come in and do it and town pay nothing as a point of closure. Because of course, over the years, we haven't put aside any money, to do this, and that's no different than any other community. I did the landfill closure in Blackstone where we took in C&D material, and we had enough money not only to close and cap the landfill, but to pave the roads leading up to the landfill, and having an additional amount of money left over to do recycling on site as a transfer station, a recycling transfer station for area communities. So there are a number of options that I'm familiar with as well, but I think that the way we're going here, we haven't made decisions yet that will determine what direction we actually end up going. If we look at an option where a developer comes in, develops solar panels, that obviously leads us in a decision-making mode that would be number 7. If we don't do that and we take in the soils, we still need $3 million. And I think what Selectman Coyle is indicating is is it prudent for us to take $1 million and put that aside as part of a debt exclusion, along with maybe the roads project, or looking at a combination of the two, because we're gonna have to do something. I guess the larger question, I can't answer this, would be, what is the financial appetite of the community to do a debt exclusion to cap some vacant land? And I think, you know, before you do that, do you build a new school? Do you do any of the other competing interests or needs that are out there? And how do you
Well, that's a good question.
manage
I mean,
that?
Obviously, this is being mandated by the DEP.
This is something that has to be
It
done.
has to be
It's the
done,
consent
but
order.
however, at the end of the day, it has to go to the ballot box. What if the debt exclusion does not pass?
You better have an option B.
The state will probably give you a pass one time, and then they'll say, what are you doing to make sure it goes the next time?
Yeah.
And then if it doesn't go the next time, you know, I don't know of them, of a circumstance where they've gone into enforcement when a town doesn't pass. I think it finds its way to get passed generally, because the community recognizes that there are no options. It has to be done.
Well, then it's an environmental issue as well. I mean, there's a greater impact from an environmental perspective to do nothing.
Is option 4 a possibility where we import some soils, but we also look at the solar fields? I mean, you said it needs to be raised anyways, and it needs to be raised at an incline. So if we import some soils into the back portion, a little bit to the front, you get the best of both worlds. You get a kickback for the solar fields, and you get a kickback for some of the soil.
Well, I don't want to leave you with the impression that you have to import material, because you don't. You could move what's out there, and that's what option 7 was. You could slope that off a little bit so it's not as mounted.
The only reason I'm mentioning that is because it's actually it gives the town some revenue. It makes this $3 million, maybe 2.5, or just, I'm throwing these numbers out there, I'm not being quoted, but maybe, okay, we saved $500,000, and we get some electricity, electric company might be interested in it, so maybe, I don't know, just another option.
What's the bid process for a solar company to come in here and bid on something
Well,
like this?
you don't necessarily have to bid on the PP, purchase power agreement itself, but you would have to bid on the solar panels and so forth. And the options, I think, are something that you'd want to bid on. So I think there is an amount of bidding, public bidding procurement that's required. I do have and have shared with, I don't know if I have, I recently received, I should say, probably within the last 2 months, some documents from Copeland and Page that deal with public property, solar panel development. I'll share those, that general opinion with the board, so you'll have some sense as to what the limits are as far as public procurement are concerned.
How would we find out if there was any interest in that site?
We would certainly advertise it to see if we could get some interest, and maybe we can do, we can start with a invitation for proposals. Well, that's an IFP. That would give us some options to look at, which, and I think those are good to start with, because what it does is companies will come forth with some creative ideas as to what they would like, what would not only profit them, but would help with a closure process for the town. Our objective would be to look at a closure process that would minimize the financial impact to the town. That, I think, is our primary concern. And there are a number of ways that we could probably achieve that. If we look at a purchase power agreement that takes that closure amount for 20 years, and says at the end of 20 years, the town owns the panels and can start generating that electricity. But the 2.6 or 3.3 or whatever that amount is that would be necessary for closure is wrapped up in that BPCA rate, that would be an option that we would have to seriously consider. You know, because when you look at what's coming up over the next 4 to 5 years, you've got a potential road reconstruction initiative. You've got a potential new school being built at some point. And we need to navigate through the financial waters as to how best we're going to make all of that work without shifting a disproportionate burden onto you know, the taxpayers. And the taxpayers historically have been very kind to the town in relationship to capital projects and capital improvements of that nature. So I think that, you know, we have to be mindful of that, and if we as decision makers and as a town, if we can demonstrate to them that we have proceeded in the most efficient, cost-effective manner possible in relationship to closure, and that we're just not turning and saying to them, okay, we need 3.6 million, let's all pony up. But we do have ways to offset that, whether it's from contaminated soils, whether it's from solar panels, or a combination of both, or one or the other of greater significance. I think we can go back comfortably to the taxpayer and say, we need about $1 million, or we need $500,000, but it's not the 3.2 or 3.6 that we initially needed, because we offset those costs through a number of different initiatives. I think that at that point, it becomes palatable. But if we do nothing, and say, well, we need 3.6 million, let's take the easy way out, I think residents are going to push back. And that's just my opinion.
Does anybody have?
Yeah, just a question for the people at home, more or less. We're going to have to put so many cubic yards of material on top of that. It could be good gravel or good fill, or it could be contaminated soil. And we keep using that. What is contaminated soil? And what is the replications down this? Is it safe? Is it something that the state might come down and DEP later on and say, oh no, we decided, you know, like urea formaldehyde foam or something like that? What is that, Steve, just for the people at home?
It's, when we talk about the term contaminated soils, there's soils that come from maybe brownfield sites or, you know, environmental cleanup sites, where there might, it's under control at that particular site of generation. There's been an assessment done at the air base, and they found that this area has contaminants in this quantity. It could be petroleum impact, could be volatile compounds, could be metals. They can go to, under the DEP's policies, you can take those soils to an unlined landfill if the concentrations are a certain level. It might be too much to leave at that site and a problem at that site, but you can dispose of them if they don't, at an unlined landfill, if they don't exceed certain levels. You can dispose of them at a lined landfill, and the concentrations can be greater because the environmental control is greater. They use that policy and they connect it to this importation of material to say, well, this is an unlined site. You're essentially disposing of those soils at this unlined site. So if those soils from the site of generation or sites of generation have concentrations of lead, let's say, that don't exceed, I'm throwing a number out, 300 parts per million, it can go here. And it can go here because it's going to be encapsulated here eventually. It all goes hand in hand with capping the site. So it's legitimate to take it here. And as far as what's a future residual effect, like environmental impact, the idea is it's been contained, so that's not, you're not making a worse environmental condition. DEP wouldn't want to advocate that or have policies that would advocate that. But you're right, things come up down the road, and all of a sudden. But when you have a capped site, that's a different matter. You know.
Thank you. And just one more to follow up on that. The people would actually pay the town to dispose of that material, opposed to having to buy it, and that's where the price difference comes in.
Well, the policy was originally, and it's part of the tenets of the policy, is that this is not intended to be a revenue generator in and of itself. If you need material to help you reach closure, pre-capping grades, this is a good way to achieve that and get some revenue. Over time, and under certain circumstances, that the emphasis by the state on, it's not solely intended to be a revenue generator. It's still true. If you need the material, this is a great way to get it. Abington doesn't have to do it in order to make grade out there. But with the state, they recognize that. That's not a problem for the state. It hasn't been a problem in discussing this whole thing. It's one of the few sites that are out there that could still take in this material. So it's, you don't need it, but as a revenue potential, you can take it in, and you have flexibility to the degree that you want to be able to take it in.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple of comments. One, when we go forward with whatever we decide, I think we need to make sure that it's a public process, much like option 3 was a public process, correct? And if we're gonna change now to something different, I just wanna make sure that everybody is aware of that in the neighborhood and in the town, that something, it may not be option 3 at this point, it may be something different. So I don't wanna have all of a sudden people surprised that, oh, jeepers, we thought we were gonna get a recycling center and a cap out in the back, and now we're getting a solar farm.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so-
let me just say that I would not sacrifice, in my own thought, I would not sacrifice the recycling center. I think that serves a greater public use and reuse, that I would not, whether there's a solar farm there or not, I would not sacrifice that 4 acres and up front to a solar farm. I would not do that, no. Because I think that there is, like I said, a greater reuse factor here, but more importantly, I think that we need to provide alternatives over the next couple of years to disposal at curbside, as far as durable goods and recycled goods are concerned. And there needs to be an option. And I think that that's something, for another discussion at some point. But I have always thought of maintaining the 4 acres or whatever for recycling purposes, because I think there's too great a public purpose to get rid of it.
And then just a question to Steve. When do you think we will actually have to make a determination as to when we're going to decide what we're going to do?
Well, I think when you're closing in on the alternatives analysis phase, that if we go to schedule here, I think this is probably getting too quiet, that's why it shut down. Or it's trying to tell me something.
No, I think you can just tap the button and turn it back on.
Yeah, this button here, it comes back up. The CAAA is scheduled for, to be prepared or working on those alternatives June 2013. So that's, whatever that is, 15 months away, 16 months away. I would say that would be a good time frame to work against. Because as we look at alternatives, it would be nice to be going into that alternatives analysis with headway made on one option that maybe the town is really attracted to. This makes a lot of sense. Let's add that to the alternatives analysis. Because if we were to do that CAAA today, I would look at, there's the standard regulatory one, so let's do a standard closure where maybe if the town is committed to the composting in the front, that's part of the standard closure. And that was included in those numbers, by the way. That 3 point included the cost of that front-end composting area, recycling, all of that. So that would likely be the fixed, this is what the town wants to do. But we could look at an option that didn't even have the front part of the site. So how much do you save by not doing that? Look at an option of excavating some material in some areas versus leaving it in place and capping it. What's the cost delta there? Is it more effective to pull it back in some areas? Those are the types of alternatives analysis that you generally do to come up with what's the most cost-effective way of addressing the site, and then add to that, what does the town want to do, if anything? Another option would be, if solar is part of it, to be able to, even at a very conceptual level, to look at it enough to be able to say it's viable, there's been interest, it's a real interest. We have these solar developers that have felt that 4 acres or whatever, and if there's some magic acreage, that the alternatives analysis is built around that. We're gonna do this.
So you would want to know about that by June of 2000?
Yeah, I mean, having that information would be, if we don't have it, then it's just another phase of the process that we're wondering. And then, once the alternatives analysis is done, and you're supposed to select a desired option, if you don't know what that is, and you say, look, we don't know if we're gonna do solar back, which is possible, we don't know if we're gonna do solar back there. We don't want the composting area. DEP approves of that alternative. You go into design. You design it, you build it. Solar could come out there in post-closure. It doesn't have to be part of the design. It's generally more effective to build it all in.
You would think so.
But you can do it in post-closure, even if you feel like we didn't have all the ducks in a row, but we're gonna make sure we get as much plateau area out here as part of the closure, because we know enough that that's what people want, or the developers want. But I think that June of next year would be great, using the time between now and then to start getting a feel. And I think that the whole abutting property issue is key with that as well, obviously.
Thank you.
Anything else? I'd just like to maybe talk about using the SAGE Committee's resources to investigate into the solar aspect of it. Maybe they could do some preliminary, or get them on board just to help us with, looking into the solar aspect. That's all. I don't know if they'd be willing to, or if we want to use their expertise.
There you go. Anything else? Okay. I guess if nobody else has anything, like, any questions for Steve?
I was just mentioning to Susan that I was next door here on Harvey's land a few weeks ago, and the soil's just, like you said, terrible. It's 55 minutes per inch.
Oh, really?
Yeah, per pit. You couldn't even drive a car out there, like you said, just sunk. But it's like total plain.
Mm. Yeah.
I just was mentioning to her that exactly what you were talking about was exactly what I saw.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay,
you
yeah.
want my soil log?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Any information can be helpful information.
Okay. Anything else for Steve? If nobody has
Thank you.
anything else, you can, thank you very much, Steve, for coming.
Thank you.
Very
Take 2
informative.
minutes and get him to.
Yeah, we'll take another 2-minute recess and let Mr. Wright break down.
You can break down faster than that if you'd like to, if you say the right thing.
Let's see here. We have, next on the agenda, the town manager, 5-minute report.
5?
Well, we'll try to keep it at 5. How's that? Budget hearings are going fairly well. We're starting with the larger, more complex departments. We have had our internal review. We will be posting a second amended budget document once we finish with that. We have started the 31 through 32B process, 32B process for healthcare design changes. The PEC will be notified. We'll begin that 30-day process and hopefully get to some sort of an agreement on plan design changes as we had set forth in our initial meeting with the IAC, which is the Insurance Advisory Committee. All of that is moving along at a fairly accelerated pace as a result of the statute. So hopefully at some point we'll have some good news to report in relationship to some sort of a plan design change agreement.
When did the 30-day period start?
Excuse me?
When did the 30-day period start?
It starts once we notify the PEC, which is between 2 days and 10 days after the first meeting with the IAC.
Okay.
It's a very simple process that the legislature established so that there would be no way in which we could trip up,
Second full month of February.
yeah.
Not ASAP.
Yeah, so
The IAC.
it's
EIA,
a lot of acronyms and, it's this particular process is like having a car that goes, the state gives you a car that goes 100 miles, but places the gas stations for fill-up every 125 miles away. You know, so it's almost an impossible process to really go through. But we're working with it, and hopefully, things will be going well for us, from that perspective. The RFP is on the street for the trash collection. That process, I think, between 9 and 11 companies have requested bids. We are also probably going to use mass bid for this as well, which is a new process that allows us, where they have all the documentation, and they calculate, correlate, and provide all of the information on each of the bids for us at the end of the closure period. So we're working on that as well. What mass bid will do is it'll save us money on advertising, because the way we traditionally advertise bids is that we have to put in, the parameters of the bid, what it covers, if there are any pre-bid conferences, if there, when the bid has to be open, prevailing wages, all of that information needs to be part of the advertisement. We are finding that using mass bid, it cuts down by 2/3 the cost of advertising. So we may end up using that, but I do anticipate that we will be setting up and using that for future bids, if not for the trash collection bid. So.
And one of the proposals?
The proposals are due March 1st at 10 o'clock. And questions about the bids can be answered and have to be submitted to be answered by, I think it's February 27th or 24th. I think it might be the 24th. Don't hold me to that date. So budgets are going. We're meeting with the Finance Committee every Tuesday and Wednesday. We hope to be able to go to the annual town meeting with some sort of a consensus budget, hopefully. I would certainly like to get this budget behind us sooner rather than later if we can. It doesn't look like the state at this point is cooperating from the House perspective with us, so we may have to delay it, but I'm pretty sure that if we get House numbers and I get some indication as to a conference committee agreement, we'll go forth with the budget at whatever time we have the ability to have that information. So things are going, fairly well from that perspective. I would also like to announce that in an email that I received from the Chief Executive Officer of the South Shore Tri-Town Development Corporation, that the board needs, according to their bylaws, the boards from each of the representative communities, Weymouth, Rockland, and Abington, need to appoint one member to the NAS Board of Appeals. And that board shall have the powers with respect to appeals of permits relating to property in the central development area to hear, decide, and to take any person aggrieved by reason of its inability to obtain a permit and enforcement action upon the land use administrator. So that means that this is almost like a board of appeal of some kind with respect to anyone that's aggrieved. So from the board's perspective, and this incidentally requires a board of appeal to hold a public hearing within 65 days from the filing date. So if anyone would like to serve on that and listen to the concerns of
That doesn't necessarily have
an
to be a
aggrieved
member of
party,
the
and join Kevin for a round of aspirin and
it has to be a-
Tylenol and Excedrin, he can be on that committee.
So,
But Kevin,
yeah, it doesn't matter.
well, if it's got to be a ZBA member, then it should be a ZBA.
I think we can appoint Kevin, I think.
No.
It has to be a ZBA member, he believes, so.
It has to be a ZBA member?
Have you posted that on the
Appointed
website,
by
John?
us.
No, but if it has to be a ZBA member, then we shouldn't post it, we should just send it to ZBA.
ask them if they could send us, it has to be appointed by the board, but if they want to send a designee to us.
Okay, I'll send notice to them. Because it's real, if it's a ZBA member, then it would probably, require we wouldn't need to put it on the website.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think that's all I have for a very abbreviated, very short, condensed, almost like a Campbell soup type condensed report.
Without water. Okay. Selectmen, old, new business. Does anybody have any?
Just, we had talked about at the last meeting, putting on the agenda, goals and objectives for the town manager.
Yeah.
We can put that on for the next meeting.
Okay, I did. I sent an email out to the members of the board, and once again, Andy and Kevin rose to the occasion, and I have some goals and objectives. They're still trickling in, okay?
Gotta get right on it.